You ever lie awake in the middle of the night, just staring at the ceiling, and that thought sneaks in, when this body stops breathing, where's the mind go? Maybe you don't talk about it much, but it sits there quiet and heavy right behind the heartbeat. Maybe you've lost someone you love, or maybe you've just had one of those nights where life feels too big to understand. That's where this story begins. And hey, if you find comfort in gentle talks like this, don't forget to subscribe so we can keep walking through these questions together, one quiet breath at a time. You know, this question about what happens after death, it's not new. People have been asking it since the very first time someone looked up at the stars and felt that ache of not knowing. It's such a human thing, isn't it? We build temples, write books, light candles, all try and touch that mystery. But maybe the real secret isn't hiding somewhere out there. Maybe it's right here, in how we live, breathe, and pay attention to what we call life. Buddhist teachings don't really hand you a final answer wrapped in gold. They don't say, here, believe this. Instead, they invite you to look, to really see for yourself what's happening in this moment, the way your thoughts rise and fade, your body changes, your emotions shift. It's gentle, not demanding. The Buddha didn't say, follow me. He said, look here, look deeper. Maybe that's where understanding begins. Most of us wake up each morning, look in the mirror, and think, there I am again. Same face, same smile, same person. But that's just the surface. Science already tells us our bodies are constantly renewing, millions of cells dying and being born every second. In a few years, almost nothing in your body is the same as it was before. You're like a river that never stops flowing, always changing, never still. And your mind? It's even more delicate. Thoughts come and go like the tide. Emotions swell and fade. Memories feel solid, but they, too, drift. The mind is not a stone. It's a stream. Try this for a second. Close your eyes. Feel your breath moving in and out. There's a thought. There's another one. Maybe a sound in the background. None of them stay long, do they? They show up, they linger, and then gone. That's what the mind is doing every single moment. So maybe the real question isn't where's the mind go when we die, but where does it go even while we're alive? Because right now, every moment is dying into the next. Every thought that disappears is a tiny death, and every breath that comes in is a small rebirth. And if that's true, then maybe death itself isn't this sudden end, this wall we hit once. Maybe it's just another wave in the same ocean. You don't have to believe that. Just feel it. Let it sit with you. You see, we all carry this feeling that we are solid, that there's a me sitting somewhere behind the eyes, steering the ship. But think about it. If we really had full control, wouldn't we be able to stop pain? Or tell our minds to never feel sad again? Wouldn't we stop time from changing our faces? Or hold on to the people we love forever? But we can't. Things move on their own. The more you watch, the more you see. There's no fixed self running the show. There's just this flow, this rhythm of birth and ending happening again and again. And yet, that doesn't make life less beautiful. It makes it more precious. Knowing that nothing stays, we start to love more fiercely, listen more deeply, and forgive a little faster. We begin to see that every second, even the ones that hurt, are gifts that will never return in the same way. I think that's what the Buddha meant when he asked us to see things as they really are, not in a cold, distant way, but with warmth, with the kind of tenderness you feel when you hold something fragile and realize it won't last forever. Maybe the mind doesn't go anywhere when the body dies. Maybe it just keeps unfolding, like a story that keeps being written word by word, breath by breath. And maybe the point isn't to chase an answer, but to live the question, to wake up each day and whisper to yourself, this moment is alive. This moment matters. So, if you're here listening right now, I hope you let that thought sink in. You don't have to figure it all out today. Just notice how it feels to be alive, right here, right now, and let the mystery be something soft, not something scary. And if you'd like to keep exploring thoughts like this, gently, honestly, subscribe and stay close. Because next time, we'll go deeper into what this mind stream really is and how it might continue after the body's final breath. Until then, just breathe. Let the river flow. Maybe that's all the answer we need for now. You know, the more we sit with this question, the more we realize it's not just about death. It's about what it means to be alive. We spend so much of our lives running after comfort, after love, after success, and yet somewhere deep down, there's this quiet knowing that nothing we touch really stays. And maybe that's what makes us scared of death. It's not the ending itself. It's the losing everything we hold on to, including the idea of me. But Buddhism doesn't look at death as a tragedy. It looks at it as part of the rhythm, like how day turns to night, how waves rise and fall, how the seasons change without asking anyone's permission. In that rhythm, there's no real ending, just transformation. The body goes back to the earth. The breath returns to the air. The warmth of life turns into energy that moves on, unseen but not lost. Maybe the mind, too, follows that same law. In Buddhism, there's this beautiful idea called a stream of consciousness. Think of it like a candle lighting another candle. The first flame dies, but the fire continues. The new candle isn't the same, but it isn't completely different either. There's a link, a continuity. The body may stop, but the energy of the mind doesn't vanish. It just flows into a new form, carried by intention, memory, and karma, not as punishment or reward, but as cause and effect, the same way one wave gives birth to the next. And I know, when you hear the word karma, it might sound like some heavy cosmic justice system, but it's simpler than that. Karma just means what you do, what you think, what you say. All of it leaves a trace like footprints in sand. Over time, those traces shape where the mind flows next. You could say that every moment we're living right now is a result of all the moments that came before, and the seed for everything that comes after. So when the body dies, maybe the mind doesn't disappear. It just continues the story it's been writing all along. But even if you don't believe in rebirth, there's something deeply comforting in this view, because it tells us that nothing, not even love, not even kindness, ever goes to waste. Every smile, every word of compassion, every small act of courage leaves an imprint on the universe, and somehow that becomes part of what carries on. You might say, well, I can't see where it goes. And that's true, but maybe not everything real needs to be seen. You can't see the wind, but you can feel it on your skin. You can't see love, but it can break your heart wide open. The mind is like that, invisible but powerful. It's not trapped in the body. It's more like the sky that holds everything. When the clouds pass, the sky remains. So maybe when the body dies, the mind doesn't go somewhere else. Maybe it returns to that open space, that still, quiet sky that's always been there behind the noise of thought and memory. You've touched that space before, you know, when you sit in silence and everything feels clear, when you look at the ocean and feel something vast inside you. That's it. That's the mind before it becomes mine. And the more we live in awareness of that, the less we fear the end. Because you start to feel that the mind isn't really born, and it doesn't really die. It just changes shape, like water turning into vapor or sunlight turning into warmth. So maybe the real purpose of asking, where does the mind go, isn't to solve a mystery, but to wake up to this moment, to see that life and death aren't two separate things. They're the same dance, the same breath, in and out. And if you're still here listening, maybe you can take a moment right now just to breathe, feel your chest rise and fall. Feel that quiet awareness that's watching, not judging, not grasping, just there. That's what continues. That's what remains untouched by time. If these words bring you a little peace or even a moment of stillness, I'd love for you to stay connected. Subscribe, not for me, but for you, so we can keep having these gentle talks. Keep reminding each other that it's okay not to have all the answers. It's okay to wonder. It's okay to be human. So for now, just rest in that silence. Let the question fade. Let your breath be the only thing that matters. Because in that space between two breaths, maybe that's where the mystery lives. You know, sometimes the hardest part about thinking of death isn't the fear of pain or the unknown. It's the thought of letting go of your home, your laughter, your favorite morning coffee, the people you love so deeply it aches. And I think that's what truly scares us, the idea that everything we love might just vanish like smoke. But maybe it doesn't vanish. Maybe it transforms, just like we do. Buddhism has this gentle way of helping us face that truth, not by forcing us to be brave, but by inviting us to look softly. It says everything in life is impermanent. Nothing lasts forever. Not joy, not sorrow, not even fear itself. And when you really start to see that not as an idea, but as a living truth, something inside you begins to loosen. You stop clinging so tightly. You stop trying to hold back the tide. You start to breathe easier. Think about a sunset. The moment the sun touches the horizon, part of you wants to hold it there, to freeze it, because it's so beautiful, so golden, so peaceful. But you can't. You have to let it go. Yet the beauty doesn't end, does it? It shifts into twilight, into stars, into the quiet hum of night. That's what impermanence is like. It hurts, but it also frees us. So when we ask, where does the mind go when the body dies? Maybe the answer isn't far away. Maybe it's happening right now, in every small moment that we let something go. When we forgive, when we move on, when we say goodbye. We're practicing the art of dying a little and living again. And here's something beautiful. In Buddhism, death isn't the opposite of life. It's the other side of the same thing. The mind, like the seasons, doesn't just stop. It shifts, transforms, continues. The energy of who we are, our kindness, our choices, our awareness, keeps moving, like a song that echoes long after the musician has stopped playing. Some people say the mind finds another body, another life, a continuation of what's unfinished. Others say it dissolves into something larger, like a drop returning to the ocean. But maybe both are true in their own way. Maybe what continues isn't the I we hold on to, but the energy of our becoming. The quiet stream of consciousness that has no beginning and no end. I know that can sound abstract, but it's actually very human. Because every time you love, every time you care for someone, every time you show patience, that's your mind creating ripples that never really die. Even when the body fades, those ripples keep moving through others, through memories, through moments you'll never even see. Maybe that's the most beautiful kind of immortality. And I think that's why the Buddha didn't ask us to escape life, but to wake up to it, to live with open eyes and a tender heart, so that when the final breath comes, we don't meet with fear, but with familiarity, like greeting an old friend. Because the truth is we've been dying and being reborn every single day, with every change, every ending, every new beginning. So maybe when the body dies, the mind doesn't disappear into darkness. Maybe it just slips into silence, a soft, endless silence. And from that silence, new life begins. If you stayed with me this far, thank you. I know these aren't easy things to think about, but maybe that's why we talk about them, to make peace with what we can't control, and to remember how fragile and miraculous it is to be here at all. If you'd like to keep walking through this kind of quiet reflection, where we talk not about answers, but about feeling our way through mystery, I'd love for you to stay close. Hit subscribe, not as a habit, but as a small way of saying, yeah, I want to keep exploring this. Because this space we share, it's a reminder that even in the face of endings, something inside us still whispers, I'm here. And maybe that whisper is the mind's way of telling us it never really leaves. Sometimes when we talk about death, people get quiet, not because they don't care, but because they feel something stir inside, something too big for words. It's that strange, heavy awareness that one day this breath will be our last. But maybe, instead of running from that truth, we can learn to sit with it, not in fear, but in tenderness. Because when we sit quietly with the idea of death, what we really begin to see is life. Buddhism has this beautiful way of showing us that life and death aren't two separate doors. They're one open space. The body, yes, it changes, fades, becomes part of the earth again. But the mind, that subtle awareness, that spark of knowing, it moves, shifts, continues like a breeze that never truly stops. The Buddha called it the stream of consciousness, not something solid or permanent, but a current that flows through time, shaped by everything we think, say, and do. And maybe that's the secret right there, that the mind is not a thing to hold on to, but a movement to understand. Imagine a candle flame lighting another candle. The first flame goes out, but the light continues. It's not the same flame, but it's not different either. The energy just carries on in a new form. That's how the mind works when the body dies. Not lost, not erased, just transformed. When we lose someone, the pain can feel unbearable. The empty chair at the table, the sound of their laughter that still echoes in your chest. It's enough to break anyone open. But when you close your eyes and breathe, really breathe, sometimes you can feel them. Not as a ghost, not as a memory, but as presence, soft, invisible, but real. Maybe that's what it means when people say love never dies. Maybe the energy of love is a continuation of mind. And the more we understand that, the more gently we begin to live. We stop taking things for granted. We stop holding grudges. We start to realize that every small kindness, every word of forgiveness, every act of compassion is not just something we do. It's something we become. Because those are the things that ripple beyond this body, beyond this lifetime. They're what shape the next wave in that endless stream. So maybe the question, where's the mind go, isn't really about location. Maybe it's about direction. Does it move toward peace or toward confusion, toward love or toward fear? And that direction, it's something we shape right now, every single moment. When you speak gently, when you forgive, when you pause before reacting, you're already shaping where the mind will flow next. It's a quiet responsibility, but also a beautiful one, because it means we have the power, right here and now, to guide the current, to fill with understanding, with kindness, with awareness. That's the kind of energy that doesn't fade when the heart stops beating. That's the kind that continues. So maybe death isn't something to defeat. Maybe it's something to befriend. Because when you really look, you see that everything, every smile, every sunrise, every goodbye, carries a touch of death in it. But that's what gives life its beauty. If things lasted forever, we'd stop noticing how precious they are. The cherry blossom is beautiful because it falls. The song moves us because it ends. And so, maybe when the body dies, the mind doesn't go somewhere. Maybe it just returns to that vast, quiet space from which it came, a space of awareness, of peace, of stillness that was always here, waiting beneath the noise. If you felt even a small piece of peace while listening, maybe that's a sign that the part of you which is listening, that quiet awareness inside, is already touching the edge of that space. It's not far away. It's not after death. It's here now in you. So, if you'd like to keep exploring this, slowly, gently, like two friends walking through the night, talking about things that matter, then stay close. Subscribe, not because you have to, but because maybe deep down you want to keep remembering that this life, this breath, this mystery is sacred. And tonight, before you sleep, try whispering to yourself, it's okay to let go. It's okay to not know. Because maybe the mind doesn't travel anywhere when the body dies. Maybe it simply comes home to the silence that has been holding it all along. You know, there's a quiet moment that happens when someone you love takes their last breath. The world doesn't stop. Cars still pass outside. Birds still sing. But something inside you goes very still. You can almost feel it, like the air changes shape. It's in that silence, when everything else fades, that the real question touches your heart. Where did they go? You reach out and the body's still there, but the person, the laughter, the warmth, the spark behind their eyes, is gone. And it hits you that the body was never really them. It was only a doorway, and the mind, that mystery we can't quite name, has stepped through. In those moments, Buddhism offers not an answer, but a gentle hand. It whispers, nothing truly ends, it just changes. The body returns to the earth, yes, but the mind, that awareness, that energy, continues, carried forward by everything it has touched, like a song that lingers even after the musician has gone home. Maybe that's what people mean when they say love never dies. Maybe love is the echo of the mind that keeps moving through time. When you think about it, we've all felt that continuation in small ways. Sometimes you hear your mother's voice in your own words, or you find yourself laughing exactly the way your father did. Sometimes you feel someone's presence in the wind or in a dream, and you can't explain it, but it's there. Maybe it's not just memory. Maybe it's the mind's gentle way of showing that it doesn't vanish when the body stops. Buddhism often says the mind is like a wave on the ocean. It rises, it falls, but it never leaves the water. Death, then, isn't an ending. It's just a wave returning to the sea. The energy that once formed your thoughts, your feelings, your life, merges back into something vast and timeless, the same space it came from. And maybe one day, that energy rises again as another wave, another form, another life. But here's the thing. You don't need to wait until death to touch that space. You can feel it now. When you sit quietly, when the noise fades and you feel that calm awareness inside, that's the same mind that continues. The same one that exists beyond the body, beyond thought. It's not something far away. It's here in every breath. Sometimes we chase answers like they're treasures we have to earn. But the truth doesn't always come through thinking. It comes through noticing. When you're sitting by the window, watching the rain, and for a moment, you stop trying to control life, that stillness you feel is the doorway. That's the place the mind returns to. That's what never dies. So maybe when the body falls away, the mind doesn't go on a journey through stars or heavens. Maybe it simply rests, like a river flowing back to the ocean, like a flame returning to the warmth of the sun. It doesn't need to go anywhere, because it was never separate to begin with. If you've ever lost someone, or even if you're just afraid of the unknown, I want to tell you this. It's okay. It's okay to not understand. It's okay to miss them. It's okay to cry. Because grief, in its deepest form, is love that doesn't know where to go. And maybe when you cry, that love is going somewhere. Maybe it's your mind's way of keeping the connection alive. So tonight, if you look up at the sky, don't ask where they are. Just feel the air on your skin, the heartbeat in your chest, the silence in between sounds. And maybe you'll sense them there. Not gone, just different. And if you'd like to keep sitting with me like this, just two souls talking softly about the things we all feel but rarely say, I'd love for you to stay. Subscribe so we can keep walking through these questions together, gently, one breath at a time. Because maybe in the end, the answer isn't about where the mind goes. Maybe it's about realizing it never really left. It's been here all along, quiet, steady, waiting for us to listen. There's something tender about the space between an ending and a beginning. It's that soft pause between the last note of a song and the start of silence, or the quiet heartbeat before the dawn breaks. When someone passes away, we often wonder what happens in that space. The invisible bridge between this life and whatever comes next. In some traditions, they call it the bardo, the in-between. But maybe it's not so much a place as it is a moment, the pure stillness where the mind lets go of one story before finding another. Buddhism paints this picture in many colors. Some say the transition happens instantly, like one candle lighting another. Others say the mind rests in that subtle in-between, where old impressions dissolve and new ones begin to form. It's not a soul drifting, not a spirit wandering. It's more like a rhythm continuing in a new melody. Imagine the ocean waves. One rises, another follows, and though they look separate, they are made of the same water. The moment one wave settles, another begins. There's no break, no loss, just a continuous flow. Maybe you felt this rhythm yourself. When you wake from a deep sleep, there's a brief instant where you don't remember your name, your plans, or even your body, yet something is still aware. That flicker of pure knowing, untouched by memory or form, might be what the ancient teachers meant when they spoke of the mind continuing. It's not something mystical or distant. It's the same awareness that watches your thoughts, feels your heart beating, and notices the world unfold. And if we think about it, this isn't just a theory. It's happening every second. Every breath we take is a tiny death and rebirth. Each moment, an old version of us fades, and a new one arrives. The cells in your body, the thoughts in your head, the emotions in your heart, they're all constantly changing. You've died and been reborn thousands of times today, without even realizing it. So maybe the afterlife isn't somewhere far away. Maybe it's happening right now, in the quiet rhythm of each passing second. I once heard a story about a monk who was asked what happens after death. He smiled and said, "The same thing that happens after you inhale, you exhale." There was no mystery in his eyes, just peace. Because to him, death wasn't the end. It was just another breath in a longer rhythm we can't fully see. That story has always stayed with me. It reminds me that maybe our fear doesn't come from not knowing what happens, but from not being comfortable with change itself. We all cling to the idea of continuity, that something of us must stay the same. But what if true peace comes from letting that go? When a candle lights another candle, the flame isn't transferred, it's reborn. The first flame doesn't need to survive. It gives its light freely and disappears into the next. Our lives might be like that, Moments of light, one after another, shaped by what we've given and who we've touched. And you know what's beautiful about that? It means we're never really gone. The kindness you show today might rise again in someone else's heart. The love you share could be the spark that keeps someone going. That's the real continuation, not in form, but in influence, in energy and compassion. So maybe we don't need to chase an answer to where the mind goes. Maybe what matters more is how we live while we're here. The intentions we plant, the love we leave behind, the peace we carry in our hearts. Because when that final breath comes and the body grows still, it's not the end. It's just another step in a rhythm. And if you're still here listening, maybe this is a sign that your heart's ready to rest in that mystery without fear. Stay with me a little longer. Let's keep walking this quiet path together. Subscribe, if you'd like, not just for more stories, but to remind yourself that you're not alone in wondering and you're not alone in searching. Because in this vast universe, where life and death dance endlessly, the most beautiful truth might be this: nothing is ever lost. It all just changes form and keeps shining softly, like light finding its way home. Sometimes late at night, when the world grows still and your thoughts begin to wander, you might feel something strange, like the quiet pulse of life still moving through everything, even the things that seem gone. Maybe that's what the Buddha meant when he spoke of the mind continuing, not as a traveler moving from one body to another, but as a thread of cause and effect weaving itself through time. The more you sit with that idea, the more you realize life isn't about endings at all. It's about transformation. In Buddhism, they call this Kamma, not as a punishment, not as some cosmic scoreboard, but simply the natural echo of intention. Every thought, every word, every action, it plants a seed. And those seeds don't just disappear when the body fades. They bloom somewhere, somehow, even when we're not there to see it. You've seen this truth yourself. You smile at a stranger one day, and years later, that person smiles at someone else when they need it most. You teach a child kindness, and that kindness ripples through generations. Nothing vanishes. It all continues, just in ways we can't always trace. The Buddha once said, "It is intention, I tell you, that is Kamma." It means that the heart behind what we do is what carries forward. Not the body, not the name, not the story, but the energy of the choices we've made. It's like a song that keeps playing in new forms. Maybe that's what our future really is. Not fate, not destiny, but a melody written by how we live today. I remember a story about an old gardener who tended to the same patch of land for 60 years. Every morning, he watered his plants, sang softly to trees, and smiled at the neighbors walking by. When he passed away, people thought that was the end. But the next spring, wildflowers bloomed in unexpected corners of the garden. It was as if his care had soaked into the soil itself, and in some quiet way it had. That's what Kamma feels like, the traces of our love still shaping the world long after we've left. When you really see that, something inside you softens, because it means we're not powerless. We're not waiting for life to happen to us. We're creating it moment by moment. Every time you choose compassion instead of anger, patience instead of frustration, forgiveness instead of blame, you're shaping the future, not just yours, but everyone's. That's the secret the Buddha tried to show us. The power isn't out there somewhere. It's right here, in the smallest decisions of your day. And if that's true, then death loses its grip on us. Because how can you fear an ending when you know that everything you are, your kindness, your courage, your love, will continue to ripple outward? You're not leaving behind a body. You're leaving behind a legacy of energy that touches everything. It's like lighting candles in the dark. Even after your flame goes out, the room stays bright because of the light you shared. Maybe that's why the Buddha didn't spend much time describing heaven or hell in colorful detail. He wasn't trying to make us dream of distant places. He wanted us to wake up to this place, this life, this moment, because this is where the seeds are planted. This is where everything begins again. So maybe the real mystery isn't about where the mind goes, but what kind of energy we send it forward with. Do we fill it with love or fear, with wisdom or confusion? Every moment is a chance to choose. That's what makes the path so alive. It's not about escaping life, but about embracing it fully, knowing that what we do here echoes far beyond what we can see. And as you sit here, maybe you can feel that a kind of quiet responsibility, but also hope. Because no matter what's happened before, no matter how many mistakes you've made, you can still plant something good right now. You can still change the tune. You can still be the kind of wave that leaves the ocean a little more peaceful than it was before. If this message feels like a soft reminder you needed today, I invite you to stay connected, subscribe, and let's keep walking this path together, slowly, gently, learning how to turn fear into understanding and uncertainty into peace. Because maybe in the end, the question isn't where the mind goes. Maybe the real wonder is that it keeps going at all, carried by the love, the kindness, and the choices we leave behind. There's something beautiful about the way nature teaches us what the Buddha tried to express with words so long ago. When a leaf falls, it doesn't vanish. It becomes part of the soil, nourishing new life. When the sun sets, it doesn't disappear. It simply shines somewhere else. Maybe our mind, too, follows that same gentle rhythm, never truly gone, just transforming, finding new ways to be. The Buddha once said that life moves like a river, not like a stone. A stone stays fixed, solid, unchanged. But the river keeps flowing, reshaping itself, becoming clouds, becoming rain, becoming the sea. So when we speak of rebirth in Buddhism, it's not about the same you jumping into another body like switching houses. It's more like the continuation of movement, the current of intention flowing on. You're not reborn as a person. You're reborn as a pattern of causes and effects, carried forward by your choices, your thoughts, your heart. That might sound a little abstract, but think of it this way. Every time you act from love, that love doesn't end with you. It ripples through others. It's passed along, changed, multiplied. That's rebirth too. It doesn't have to be mystical. It's happening right here, right now. Every word of kindness you speak is a small rebirth of goodness in this world. Every moment of patience is a new seed of peace planted in a tired heart. And every time you forgive, even when it's hard, you let something painful die and something wiser be born. Maybe that's the secret behind all of this. Death isn't a punishment. It's an opening. It's the space that allows something new to begin. Just as night allows the morning to come, and silence allows the song to be heard. So when the body fades, the mind doesn't fall into nothingness. It returns to the great rhythm of everything. Some call it the universe. Others call it nature. Others call it simply peace. There's a story I love of a monk who once asked his teacher, "Where do we go when we die?" The teacher smiled and said, "Where do you go when the candle burns out?" The student stayed quiet for a long time, and then he understood. The flame doesn't go anywhere. It simply ceases to appear because the conditions that sustain are gone. But its warmth, its light, its effect on the darkness, they remain. Maybe that's what happens to us, too, when our time here ends. The conditions that shaped this me dissolve, but the warmth we gave, the love we shared, the lessons we left, they stay. They keep moving, glowing quietly in others. That's why it matters how we live, how we treat people, how we speak to ourselves. Because all of it continues long after our name is forgotten. And if you think about it, that's kind of comforting, isn't it? We don't need to chase eternity or fear oblivion. We're already part of something that never stops. We're already participating in the endless cycle of becoming. Maybe this body is just one verse in a very long song, and every lifetime, whether big or small, joyful or painful, adds a note to melody. So, if you're listening to this, maybe just take a breath. Feel your chest rise and fall. That movement right there, that's life flowing through you. It's the same life that moved through your ancestors, your children, and everyone who'll come after. We're not separate streams. We're all drops of one vast ocean. And maybe that's what freedom truly is. Not escaping the cycle, but understanding that you were never outside of it in the first place. When you realize that the fear begins to fade, the need to grasp and cling softens. You stop asking, where will I go? And start whispering, it's okay, wherever this current carries me. If this feels like it touched something gentle inside you, stay close. Subscribe, and let's keep exploring these quiet truths together. Not as lessons, but as reminders, as heart-to-heart conversations. Because sometimes the most profound wisdom isn't loud or complicated. It's just a whisper that says, you were never really gone. You've always been part of the return. There's a silence that comes after a heartbeat stops. Not an emptiness, but a pause. It's like the hush between two waves, or the stillness before dawn. Buddhism calls that moment bardo, the space between lives. But it's not meant to scare you. It's not a dark tunnel or a final judgment. It's more like a resting place, a moment of drifting before the next breath begins. The Buddha never painted this space with bright details, because he wanted us to understand something softer, that what happens there isn't separate from what happens here. The quality of that in-between moment is shaped by the life we've lived right now, by the state of our mind when we let go. Maybe you felt a small version of that already, the moment before you fall asleep, when your thoughts blur, your grip loosens, and everything becomes light. That gentle surrender, that release, that's a tiny death we experience every night. And somehow, each morning we return. In that same way, when the final sleep comes, maybe the mind drifts into something vast and open, guided not by our possessions or our fears, but by the energy of our heart. If you ever sat beside someone who was dying, you might have noticed it, that subtle peace that sometimes appears right at the end. The body grows still, the struggle fades, and there's this quiet presence, as if they're listening to something we can't hear. In that silence, it feels less like an ending and more like a homecoming. That's the space the Buddha spoke about, where we finally see that the boundaries we clung to were never real, that life and death were just different sides of the same flow. And here's something comforting. The way you meet that space depends on how you've met your life. If you've lived with love, you'll drift with love. If you practice letting go of anger, of pride, of control, then death will feel like a continuation of that same gentle practice. But if you've lived tangled in fear or hatred, that energy follows too, not as punishment, but as a simple law of nature. The mind moves where it's been trained to go. That's why the Buddha taught us not to fear death, but to prepare for it by living with awareness now. Because every moment of mindfulness, every breath of compassion, is like learning how to die, not in sadness, but in peace. Every time you forgive, every time you release a grudge, you're practicing the art of letting go. You're lightening the luggage you'll carry when the final journey begins. Some say the mind, after death, moves through visions, reflections of life just lived, echoes of love and loss. Maybe it's true, or maybe it's just the mind finding its way back to the source. But whatever form it takes, it's never about punishment or reward. It's simply the unfolding of what's been planted. Like rain returning to the ocean, everything finds its way home. And that's the beautiful part. We don't need to control it. We don't need to know exactly what comes next. It's enough to trust that the same mystery that carried you into this life will carry you beyond it too. You were held before you were born, and you'll be held again when you leave. Nothing truly falls into nothingness. It just changes shape, softens, and returns. So maybe the real practice isn't about chasing enlightenment or escaping rebirth. Maybe it's about softening into the truth of impermanence, learning to let each moment die gracefully, so that when the final one comes, it feels familiar, like exhaling after a long day, like slipping into a dream that feels like home. And if this reflection brought you even a moment of calm, I'd love for you to stay. Subscribe, and let's keep walking this quiet path together. One breath at a time, one small truth at a time. Because when we walk gently with life, we also learn how to walk gently with death. And maybe, just maybe, we'll find that there's no real space between the two at all, only the endless rhythm of return. There comes a moment when all the searching, all the questioning, all the trying to understand begins to fade. And what's left isn't an answer, but a feeling, a kind of stillness, a peace that doesn't come from knowing, but from no longer needing to. That's where the Buddha's words begin to make sense, not in the mind, but in the heart. Because in the end, the question, where does the mind go when the body dies, isn't really about death at all. It's about belonging. It's about realizing that we were never separate from the universe we came from. When the candle burns out, its light doesn't vanish. It joins the space around it. And maybe that's what happens to us. Maybe the love we've given, the lessons we've learned, the laughter we've shared, they all return to the great fabric of life, like drops of rain falling back into the sea. The body rests, but the essence, that quiet awareness behind every thought, every breath, it continues, not as you or me, but as part of something boundless and kind. Sometimes I think of it like this. Imagine standing by the ocean at sunset. The waves crash and fade. The sky burns gold. And for a moment, everything feels connected. The air, the sound, your heartbeat, the horizon. That feeling right there, that's what the Buddha meant when he spoke of no self. It's not about disappearing. It's about remembering that you were never apart. When that truth sinks in, death stops being something to fear. It becomes another wave returning home. And maybe that's why the Buddha smiled so often. He saw the beauty in impermanence, how every ending carries a seed of beginning. He saw that nothing real can ever be lost. That love outlives the body that carried it. That kindness keeps rippling long after the hands that gave it have gone. So, when the body dies, the mind doesn't fall into darkness. It simply softens, opens, and flows, like light moving from one dawn to another. If you close your eyes right now and just listen, not to the noise around you, but to the gentle hum beneath it, you might feel that same continuity, the quiet pulse of life moving through everything. That's you. That's all of us. We were never just this body, this story, this name. We've always been part of something ancient and endless, something that breathes through trees, through wind, through stars. So maybe the real question isn't where does the mind go, but can I learn to rest in that vastness even now, before the body falls away? Because when you do, when you touch that still place inside, you begin to live differently. You speak softer. You love deeper. You stop rushing. You stop fighting the flow. You realize that life doesn't need to be conquered or understood. It just needs to be felt. And that's the quiet gift the Buddha left us. Not a map of heaven or a promise of forever, but a way to live now, gently, honestly, awake. A way to meet both life and death with the same calm smile, whispering, "It's okay. Everything is just changing shape." If you stayed with me through this journey, thank you. I hope something in these words felt like a soft place to rest your heart. And if it did, I invite you to subscribe, not just to follow another video, but to stay connected to this little space where we keep exploring together, not as teachers or students, but as travelers sharing the same road. Because in the end, there's no real ending. Just this, the quiet continuation of love, of breath, of awareness. The body may fade, but what we are, that keeps going endlessly beautifully, like a flame passed from one heart to another, lighting the way home.